Lord, thank you so much for who you are and that we can come before you and that these things in life that are difficult, we're not doing this on our own. But you are here with us and you love us and you want us to experience the life that you created for us. And you love us. And you love our families, our children, our parents, our friends, that we're not trying to navigate this world and figure all this stuff out on our own. You care so much more than we do and ever could. So I just ask that you would speak to us this morning, speak to us through your word, and that we would really have our eyes opened to what it is that you want to say to us. In Jesus' name. Before I begin, I want to share a story. So my background's in radio broadcasting. This went to school for, and I worked in radio for a number of years. And one of the things that I got to do was work for a 24/7 news station. And one evening, I was getting ready for the evening shift, and so we're just, putting the stories together, writing our notes, getting ready like normal. And about 2 minutes before our shift started, before the top of the hour, a little bulletin came across, because all the police bulletins come across our system automatically, and it said that the major road was closed because there was a family being airlifted because of a car accident, and it was a 33-year-old male, 31-year-old pregnant woman, and a 2-year-old baby. And I did this stuff happens all the time. And so it quickly just throw the details up at the top story because everyone cares, because the only reason we listen to the radio is for traffic. And so this is a major road closure and a big incident, and we need to let people know about it. So the music is playing, and I'm getting ready, and pretty much right as I hit that button to go live, I see my phone light up that I'd left on the desk, and my friend had texted me, "Pray for Jeff." And all of a sudden, I couldn't speak, because all of a sudden I knew, because my friend Jeff was 33, and he had a 31-year-old pregnant wife and a 2-year-old baby. And I realized it wasn't just these faceless statistics on the screen in front of me, but it was these people that I knew and loved and cared about. And I could not speak. And I stood there, and I had a co-anchor, and I was looking over at her, pleading with my eyes to start talking, because I couldn't. And that was one of the catalysts for me getting out of doing news, because it broke how I was able to handle it. I couldn't do it anymore. I could not just read about these 27 people dead in this avalanche here, and 300 people died over here because of this and this accident and whatever it is. If there was an accident downtown with a 26-year-old brunette woman on her bike, I'm immediately thinking, that's my 26-year-old friend. I know someone who looks like that. I know that description. And I was just constantly, I could not read the stories. I think what actually happened to me is that I got God's view of how the news sounds. Because there's no statistics in God's eyes. There's only stories of people that he loves. And it's a hard way to look at the world. It's difficult. But it's how God sees the world. And so today we're going to talk about some stuff that's hard. And I'm going to say some things that are difficult. But I ask you to lean in to the pain and to the hard parts of it, because we need to understand this. We need to understand how God sees us and how he sees everyone around us. If we do, it'll change everything. I shared a little bit about this last week, but when I was 8 years old, it was the first time I saw pornography. And it was literally strewn across the street. It was just lying there on the road. Just a magazine somebody left. And I have no ability to draw. I failed Sunday school. I'm so bad. But if I could draw that picture for you today. Right? It was burned into my brain. And it's not just because, it's this sexual content in the way. It's because it was designed to tell me a story. It was telling me a story of who that woman was, what she was for, and how I was supposed to relate to her. And all around us, we are being bombarded by these images. It's not just stuff that's officially pornography, right? The world is constantly bombarding us with these images of this is who you are, this is what you're for, this is what the people around you are for, this is who they are. And one time, I was actually at an event speaking, and afterwards my wife texted me this story, and I've told it in almost every talk since, which is while I was speaking, my wife was at home with kids throwing up. And one of the kids was throwing up, and she's patting her back, and she's saying, "It's okay, it's okay." And my daughter turned around and said, "No, it's not." And she was like, "You're right, it's not okay. It will be okay. But what is currently happening is not okay. You're actually correct about that." And that's what I want us to be able to do. When the world tells us things that are not true, we need to know the truth so well that we look at the world and go, "No, it's not." With the confidence of a 3-year-old throwing up, being told that throwing up is fine. Like, this isn't remotely true. And the stuff the world is telling us, it's not remotely true, and we need to know that. We need to know the truth about who we are, what we're for, and what kind of story we're in. And before I get into that, I keep on saying before. The whole thing is just a prologue. It's like The Hobbit to Lord of the Rings. It won't be as long as the... We need to understand when I'm talking about pornography here, some of us are thinking like Playboy in the 90s. That's not what pornography is. Currently, the most recent data says that 90 out of every 100 high school boys sees pornography. And the statistics are rapidly changing because stats are always like 5 to 10 years behind. So they used to say it was like 60% of high school girls. I'll tell you from speaking all across high schools, that's not true. Both those numbers, I haven't met anyone in high school. And I've spoken at tons of them. And my colleagues have spoken at far more. We haven't met teenagers who haven't seen anything. Actually, there was one. My friend was speaking at a huge high school event, thousands of kids, and one kid came up to him and he said, "I have a question about your talk." And he was like, "Oh, sure, what do you want to know?" He goes, "What's pornography?" And my friend was like, "Oh my goodness, we are going to freeze you for science." Because he's the only kid who's ever asked us that in just hundreds of presentations. Normally they ask us about sexual acts we haven't even heard of. Because when we talk about pornography today, the average age of first exposure is 8. The majority of children have seen pornography before 11, and by seeing pornography, what we mean is they have seen sexual acts that if they were caught doing them in public, they'd be arrested for. The average first exposure to pornography involves more than 2 people, violence, and a lack of consent. That is the average first thing a child sees. Right? So people come to us and they say, "Oh, you need to talk to our youth so they don't get pulled into pornography." And we say, "I'm sorry, if you want us to talk to the people before they see pornography, we need to come to your elementary school." Then we have a shot. And as I said, like the statistics are 5 to 10 years behind all the time. And so, I mean, your average family hands an iPad to a 2-year-old, right? And so when we talk about all these things I'll talk about today in terms of pornography, we are talking about violent, degrading, dehumanizing acts being exposed to children. And that is the world that we're in right now. And so this is important because it tells us a story. It's powerful. It overwhelms our brains with chemicals we cannot handle. When a child sees pornography, they get a hit of 200% dopamine of what their brain could ever handle. Like, it's not their fault. It's none of our fault when we encounter something that is chemically the same as getting hit with heroin and cocaine at the same time. We're not designed to handle that. And that is the power that is hitting us and telling us lies about ourselves. Like, our brains are powerful things. Could I get a show of hands for who likes bacon. Yeah, right? Okay. So one day you hadn't had bacon, and the next day you had bacon. And from that moment on, if someone said, hey, you want bacon? Your brain's like, I remember bacon. Yes, do that again. Bacon me, right? That's how our brains work. We experience something, it fires off this crazy dopamine, and then our brain goes, I want to experience that again. Pornography is firing that off at levels that we are not designed to handle. So when we are dealing with this stuff and it's overwhelming us, and I've had so many people come to me and say, I don't want to, but I did. I'm like, yeah, that's literally how it's designed. It's designed to overwhelm your brain so that your prefrontal cortex can't make the decisions. It's overwhelming you. And it overwhelms you and lies. Right? Like how many times, here's a statistic that's going to blow your mind. More people in the world have watched pornography than have listened to Taylor Swift. One of those things is worse. I'll let you guess which one of those. Some of you might debate me. But, right? And we see articles, the impact of so-and-so's music, what it means for, like, we see this stuff all the time, right? You know, everyone's suddenly watching whatever show is they're all watching, Game of Thrones. There's like the impact of Game of Thrones on society, right? And it's just like one show that's on for an hour and whatever. And everyone knows that is affecting society, and yet, literally, the entire world is being exposed to this degrading, violent, dehumanizing content that's lying to us about who we are. When I was pulled into pornography at the age of 14, and I got pulled into just, you could call it addiction, compulsive habit, whatever you want to say, I had to convince myself that the people on the screen did not matter. If they did matter, then me watching this was not okay, not a question in my mind. I knew this wasn't right. So I had to convince myself they didn't matter. The problem was, if they didn't matter, what's the difference between them and me? I must not matter. And I would look myself in the eye in the mirror almost every single night and say, I hate you. I had to. If I didn't hate myself, I couldn't sleep at night because I knew what I was doing. And so I had to convince myself that I did not matter in order to accept that I was treating others like they did not matter. The question is, was I right? Did I not matter? If I don't matter, you guys probably don't matter either, sorry. And then none of this matters. I can stop talking. If we matter, then we need to deal with this. So that's the question I'm going to dive into for the next little while is, do I matter? Do you matter? And I'm going to say, yes, we all matter. I know this because if you take a step back, it doesn't matter what you believe about God, about anything, all humans know that people are special. Everyone agrees. You could be like a PETA activist. You could be the most, like, you love all animals. But you know that people are different than animals. We're something different. And we all know this because nobody is ever, like, campaigning to stop animals from hurting other animals. Right, like, I have an aunt who's a therapist, and she has clients who come back from safari needing professional therapy because it's brutal out there. Like, you might not be prepared for what you see. It's violent in horrifying ways. And yet nobody comes back from safari being like, stop lion gazelle violence, stop lion gazelle violence. Right, like, we all understand that humans need protection from animals. In Ontario, where I'm from, the province I'm from, it's illegal to own a pit bull because there were so many attacks on kids. Now, you could argue whether or not the government was handling that right or the rules were fair, but no one is arguing that the question, how do we make sure children aren't attacked by pit bulls, is a good question. Like, no one says that's the wrong question. You could quibble with how they go about it and the way laws work and whatever. But no one thinks they're asking the wrong question. We all know that humans are different than animals. And not only do we deserve to be protected from other species, we deserve to be protected from our own. Right? Nobody, if you hear two dogs fighting next door, you might be annoyed, but you don't get on the phone and be like, there's a canine domestic going down, stop it. You're like, dogs. But everyone agrees, if you see one person violently attacking another person, and you were like, people, like everyone thinks you're a bad person. Everyone. It doesn't matter whether or not you believe in God. So we all know this intrinsically. It's just an understood fact that all humans agree on. So we have to, okay, why? There's something about humans that is different. Why? And so for that, I will take us back to the beginning, quite literally. It says in Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, "Then God said, 'Let us make man in our image after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth.' So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created them, male and female he created them." Now, we could obviously do a full sermon series on what it means to be made in the image of God, but real quickly, God, after creating everything, he made man in his own image. He put something in us of himself that reflects who he is, our capacity for fellowship and worship and creativity. There's something of God that he put in us that he did not give any other creature. And so that is why we all know whether or not we believe in God, that we are different. We are not worthless. Something special was put into humanity that's different than just general mammals or whatever, right? That's what makes humanity different. It looked like I was raised in a very strong Bible-believing, loving family. I knew all this stuff. But what didn't get through to my heart was, okay, humans are valuable, humans are different, I get that. But are we each valuable? Right, so we have value as a species, but am I really valuable? And so I'm going to turn to Psalm 139 here. And we're going to be starting in verse 13. So Psalm 139, verse 13. "For you formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed substance. In your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there was none of them." So the Bible is telling us here that not only did God make us, like he made us very intentionally. He put us together. He did, and God did it, right? It's not telling us that God came up with humans like as a concept. He didn't Steve Jobs this and be like, hey, I have a great idea. All you people make this, right? That he is the one that puts us together. Intricately woven. And he not only put us together, but he put us together for a specific time and purpose. Like no human was ever created by accident, whatever people or your parents told you. Nobody was like God never, they're like, oh, Josh Gilman is being born today. And he's like, today, oh, I did the thing where you flip 2 months when I meant to flip 1 month on the calendar. Oh, no, he made each one of us on purpose, for a purpose, when he wanted to. And who is it that is telling us he made us? The Creator. The Creator. The expert creator. And we put a lot of emphasis on experts in society. I mean, even through this whole pandemic, few words have been as lost as much power as the word expert. But the reason why we say those experts don't know what they talk about is because we think our expert does. Oh, your panelist on this TV station said this. Well, he's a dum-dum because my panelist on my TV station said this, right? Like, we're all just like, no, I have an expert. I know the truth and you don't because of my expert, right? And I'm not going to argue with you about whose experts are right here, but that's how we are, right? I have a friend who's a fashion designer. She could tell a girl anything, and she would wear it. If she went up to a girl and was like, put this basket on your head, you look fabulous, that girl would walk out of the house with a basket on her head, and she probably would look fabulous because of the amount of confidence given to her by said fashion designer, right? Like, she knows. She knows what's beautiful and what is not, and she told me, right? I lead worship, I play piano. If Chris Tomlin came in here and was like, Josh, that song sounded all right, but have you tried playing it with your face? I'd probably try it. Like, it's Chris Tomlin. He's written every song. He probably knows better than me. We're like, we place such an emphasis on experts, the people who know. And one of the reasons why is because we know that, like, who knows what something is for and how to do something? The person who made it. Like, if you have a lawnmower, it doesn't matter how much that lawnmower thinks it's a TV. It's a lawnmower, right? The person who made it to be a lawnmower. And it does not matter what its ambitions are. It's a lawnmower. It will thrive mowing lawns. And there is a creator who created heaven and earth. And he made each one of us. And you know what we do? We tell him he messed up. Right? We look in the mirror and we criticize what God created. Right? I'm 5'9". You can't. There's many times I've been like, God, I can't believe that you forgot to make me 6 feet. We do it. We look in the mirror and we judge. Oh, my hair's too straight. It's too curly. I'm too this. I'm too light. I'm too dark. I'm too whatever it is that we judge ourselves. We criticize what God created. And look, sometimes I do not care for what he created. There was a time a few years ago where Megan was pregnant, and the kid who was 3 at the time said to me, Daddy, I'm so happy for you. Your baby's big as well. I ate a salad that night. I made some lifestyle changes. I decided to do a better job caring for what God created. But that is different than trying to judge what God created. To tell him, you made a mistake. And we do that. And we let other people do that to us. And sometimes when we talk about like modesty and purity, like we forget that God made your body. And yes, we should tell a good story in the way that we present that body. But our bodies were made by God. And if anyone tries to make you feel bad about what God created, if they tell you that what he created in your human form is not good, they are blaspheming the Most High God. And yet we still do it. And I wish I could take you, if you are sitting here and you're thinking to yourself, no, you don't understand, like, I was not made well. I would love to take you to the beginning. And we'd stand there and we'd watch as God separates land from sea. And he spins stars and planets and puts the northern lights up. And we see him make horses and wolves and mountains. And the blue whale, which is so large that a man could swim through its veins. We'd watch all this. And he finishes and he turns to us and he says, I heard you had a comment. I don't know about you, but I'd be like, no, I'm good. I trust you. I think you know what you're doing. We need to understand this God who made everything, who made it good, who made it pretty impressive. He made you. And the Bible tells us that he made you on purpose for a purpose. And nobody is perfect, but God made you perfectly according to plan. And nobody should judge you. We are creations of the Creator, the King of Kings. We have value and worth because he made us to have value and worth. He put his image in us. He made us the God of everything. He made us, and he made us how he wanted to. He made you when he wanted to. He made you for a specific time, place, purpose. And if we understand this, then we understand what the sin of pornography actually is. The sin of pornography is not seeing skin. The sin of pornography is not seeing sex. The sin of pornography is sacrificing another human on an altar to yourself. It is taking and using and abusing the beautiful and perfect creation that God made for your own purposes, for your own pleasure. It is looking at something that God made for a purpose and saying, no, you exist so that I can feel pleasure. That is what the sin of pornography actually is. And that is why it twists everything. It breaks all relationships. That is why it breaks marriages, and it separates fathers and mothers from children. It breaks our fellowship with God, because it is just the most extreme idolatry to take what God made and use it for yourself. Here's the thing. When that truth finally broke through to my heart, that's what started the change for me. Because while on one level it is crushing to realize that's what we do. But at the same time, it means that it doesn't matter what you've done. You cannot change it. You cannot uncreate yourself the way God created you to. You can't do it. You can't unplan the plans God has for you. You can't unmake yourself. You cannot do it. God made you. He is the one who knows what you're made for, and you can't change it. You're not a lawnmower or a TV. You are a son or daughter of the King of Kings, creator of the universe. You are royalty. You are a son or daughter of the King. And when you walk out your door every day, your head should be lifted high. You're a princess of the King. You're a son of the King. And everyone in the world should treat you that way. You deserve to be treated that way. And it doesn't matter what you do. You can't change that. You can't. And when that got through to me, that's what made me start to undo that cycle of shame and guilt. Because I couldn't deny anymore that I actually did have value. And if I had value, well then, they must have value. I can't change it about me. I can't change it about them. And it's the most beautiful truth. And there's nothing that you can do or can be done to you that can change your value. One of my favorite memories from speaking, I've never shared the story, I might cry more. I was speaking at a men's conference. And I've shared that it was a similar talk, and I've shared this many places, and many people come up to me and say, thank you for sharing that. And I never thought about myself, blah, 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 whatever it is, or I never thought about them that way. And I had a guy come up to me, and he goes, thank you for your talk today. And I said, he goes, yeah, it was really powerful. I'm like, I'm glad it was. He goes, you see, My mom was a porn actress. I've never heard anyone in my whole life say she had value. It doesn't matter what was done to her or what she did. I don't know what happened to her in her life along the way. She has value and worth. She's a daughter created by the Creator, perfectly according to plan. And there's nothing we can do to change this. And so the only question for us then is, okay, well then what are we going to do? How are we going to live? If this is true, how are we going to live? Because you can't change it. So how should we respond? We need to respond by fighting back against the lies of the world. We need to respond by burying these truths in our heart so that when the world tells us lies about ourselves, they say, this is how you're supposed to treat people. We turn around to them and, like my daughter, say, no, it's not. When they say, this is what you are like, this is what you're worth, we say, no, that's not even close to true. Like I've always said, and look, like it was a lot easier to talk about raising kids. My kids are really young, and it wasn't obvious how much I was messing them up. However, I'm still trying really hard. I always say that, like, my goal for my daughters is to show them my love and to show them God's love in a way that if some guy tries to say to them, like, hey, baby, I'm the only one that loves you, I want them to laugh. I want them to laugh in his face because they know, like, that. Are you kidding me? I'm so loved you don't even know. And I want them to know that about me, and I want them to know that about God. That they are loved, that there's nothing they can do to change that. So how do we live? If this specific issue that we've talked about pornography is affecting your life, then we went over this last week, but I'll just review it again. We need to cut it out of our lives, whatever it takes. When I first started saying, like, I need to do this, like, it had been 8 years of trying to do it on my own, trying really hard, memorizing some verse, and not telling anyone. I did confess a lot, but only to guest speakers, so I'd never see them again, and there was no accountability. It just felt really cathartic. But I tried to do it on my own. And then finally, when this truth got through to me, and I couldn't fight anymore, and I knew I had to do something, I started telling everybody. The first time when I was 14 and my dad caught me, he had exploded. And as a 14-year-old, I took that as anger. And I learned later, as I grew up and got to understand him more, it was sadness. It was just a lot. And he wasn't ready for that moment, and I wasn't ready for that moment. And so I'd promised myself I'd never talk to my dad about anything to do with this ever again. But once I realized I need to do that, I called him up. I talked to my mom. I talked to all of my siblings. I talked to all my roommates. I talked to all my friends. And I said, I need this out of my life. I had, like, one of the early generation iPhones because I was cool like that. And I got rid of it. I have an iPhone again now, but I got rid of it. And for years, I had a BlackBerry. I went from an iPhone to a BlackBerry. That is the suffering that Paul promises is going to happen to us. The thing was awful. My dad called it the BlackBerry Legion because we were full. It had 1,000 demons. It never did what I wanted. You push one key, something else happens. But it was worth it because I wanted it gone. I'm like, they're lying to me all the time. They're spending hundreds of billions of dollars trying to get to me. I won't let them. I put all sorts of filters on my computer, got different router things. I tried everything. I did full thing, right? Like, because you need to actually cut it out. If you have a cancerous tumor, the doctor does not come in and, like, poke it with the needle for a while and be like, well, I think I discouraged it. It'll probably go away on its own. Right? Like, and not only that, he doesn't just cut out the tumor. They cut until they know that they are cutting into healthy flesh. They make sure they've got it all, right? And so a lot of times what we do is we're like, well, like all the time talking with friends, and it's like, well, I struggle. If I watch pornography at like 8 o'clock at this time, blah, blah, blah. So you know what? At 8 o'clock, I'll put my phone away. Or better yet, no, I'll keep my phone, but I'll read the Bible on it at 8 o'clock. And I'm like, that's not going to work. Give me your phone. Is that what you use to watch pornography with? Give it to me. And I've had multiple roommates and friends and other things who, that's what they've done. They said, you know what? Like, I'm giving my computer to my roommate. I'm only allowed to use it if he's around. If he's not home, I don't get to go on my computer. And, like, that's extreme. One of my roommates who was doing this, like, that was his work computer. He couldn't work if nobody else was around. And he was like, well, so that's costing me a bit of money because I'm working on my project slower. Also, I'm not destroying my brain with lies from the enemy. Like, if we really understand this, then we will understand it's not just about trying to discourage a bad habit that's addictive and poisonous. It's about what can I cut out of my life to make sure it's gone. So, you probably know what it is. If this is something you're dealing with, you probably know how far you need to go. And I just encourage you that those conversations need to happen. And you'll be so happy they did. We need to renew our minds. We need to fill our minds not just with cutting out the bad, but bringing in the good. Right? Like at AA, they don't sit around for an hour and not say anything and be like, look at us not drink alcohol. This is it. We did it. Done. I'm pretty sure they have powerful and constructive conversations to remake their thinking. We need to treat this the same way. It's not just about like sitting there and being like, I did it. I didn't think about pornography for 5 minutes. Yes. Like, no, what are we thinking about? What are we putting in? Right? What are we replacing these things with? We need to be open and accessible to each other. We need to let people into our lives. And we're so bad at this in the church. We're so bad. We all come in here. Like church was Instagram before there was Instagram. Right? Because what do? We lose our salvation all the way to church. And then we step out of the car and we're like, praise the Lord. Everything is great. I'm fantastic. Yes, I only sinned 30 times before 8 a.m. And I'm depressed. But how are you? Like and guess what? The reason is because like, you're all such nice people. And so when I stand here, I'm like, why am I even preaching this? Look at these perfect, wonderful Christians. I bet they didn't raise their voice this morning, and I did. And why am I talking to them? They don't even know what sin is, let alone pornography. That's how I feel, right? If I let myself. But I'll tell you, actually, I came in this morning, I was chatting with someone, and like, praise the Lord. I was walking past one guy, I said, how you doing? And he said, not good. And like, my instinctive response is like, oh, praise the Lord too, I'm also, and it's like, oh, hang on. And then we had a conversation. What's going on in their life? Like, are we being honest? Actually, I love to do that at work all the time because I work in like all these political offices and everybody is trying to just like look as powerful and perfect as possible. And I'd go in and be like, how you doing, Josh? And I'd be like, terrible day. And they would be like, yes, me too. And then I had so many good conversations with people. Like I had to be careful because someone was like, what do you do at the office? I'm like, I'm pretty sure I'm a therapist. Because people would come and talk to me because I would be honest and real. And then I'd get to know them and they'd get to know me. Like, do people in your community, in this church, in your family, or friends outside this church, would they know if you're having a bad day without you telling them? Do they know you that well? Because it's not just about these types of sins, it's all things, right? If you struggle with anger, with gossip, with anything, right? Do your friends know you enough to say like, hey, you're kind of not doing great. What's going on? Then you can talk to them? Or are we just all pretending? We have to let people into our lives. Like, I think of it this way, like sin thrives in the darkness, and especially pornography and these types of sins, because they drive you into the darkness. Because every time you do these things, you say, I can't believe this, I'm worthless, I'm ashamed of myself, and so then you want to hide further into the dark. And then you're in the dark, and you're alone and isolated. And then you're further and further, it keeps going. And I remember when I was a kid, other kids were afraid of the dark. I was afraid of the light. Because if I'm in the dark, the bad guys can't see me. So when I was walking home late at night and the street lights were on, like I know other friends are like, yeah, I ran from street light to street light. I was like, you kidding? They can see you. I walked like this, like literally around the lights. I was like, bad guys can't see me. And that's how I lived my life. I didn't want to be seen. Jumping from shadow to shadow. Then no one will actually see me. But you walk in the light, you'll be seen. But guess what? He is in the light. He is the light. And that's where freedom is. That's where we actually get help. One of the biggest problems, we've seen it in the whole pandemic thing, is people not getting to their doctor's appointments in time. You're not seen, you might die. It's a real life consequence. Right? You need to be seen. You need people to see you. And life, like, did you know that, like my friend, he was telling me how he was a cop and he was in a like intense shootout thing. And he was saying like, as the cops, they'd actually check each other because you might get shot and not notice. Your adrenaline's up, all these things, right? You could actually get shot. And so they would check each other. And like life is crazy, and we need other people to be able to tell us how we are. Are we injured? Am I okay? Is this sweat or blood? Right? Like, we need other people in our lives, or we will not actually know how we're doing. And then, lastly, we need to rely on the Lord. Last week, and I'll read it again, just the end of Jude. Such a small book. Verse 24 in Jude. Now to him who is able to keep you from stumbling and to present you blameless before the presence of his glory with great joy. Now to him who is able. He's able. But here's the other thing. End of Psalm 139. I love Psalm 139 because it's almost like King David goes a bit bipolar here. He's like praising the Lord, right? Praising the Lord. It's a beautiful, beautiful psalm. How precious to me are your thoughts, O God. How vast is the sum of them. If I would count them, they're more than the sand. I awake and I am still with you. I could put that to music. We would sing it on Sunday. We'd all feel so good. Beautiful. Let's go sing the next verse. Oh, that you would slay the wicked, O God. O men of blood, depart from me. They speak against you with malicious intent. Your enemies take your name in vain. Do I not hate those who hate you, O Lord? And do I not loathe those who rise up against you? I hate them with complete hatred. I count them my enemies. It seems like, hey, buddy, David, you okay there? Like you were having a great worship time, and then that got weird. But it actually makes total sense. Because if you understand the beauty of who God is and the creation he made, you will hate wickedness. This speaks so much to my personal experience of going from being within the wickedness, and then as God's truth came into my life, all of a sudden going, oh, like evil, depart from me. I hate it. I hate it with extreme hatred. And so then it makes total sense how he ends the psalm. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if there be any grievous way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. And this is even crazier because it starts off with, Lord, you have searched me and known me. That's how the psalm begins. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from afar. He spends a whole first bunch of the psalms saying God already knows everything. But as he starts to express and experience the hatred of evil in light of the goodness of God, the contrast is so much that he says, God, search me again. Like, I know you know everything, but search me again just to make sure, because I hate evil so much. And when we behold the beauty and truth of God, that is what happens to us. It is not about, because I used to just do one or the other, right? Growing up and struggling with this and everything, I used to sit there and try to think about God, think about all the good things. Or I'd think about how evil is, and I try to hate all the evilness. But when we think about the evilness in light of the goodness of God, that's when the truth gets through. And that's when we have the willpower to say, God, search me again. I don't want this. And it says, and lead me in the way everlasting. He will lead you. And he's so faithful. Like, we sit here and we think, like, I don't know if he can actually do this. But the fact that you're sitting here today, I'm pretty sure you have some pretty good testimonies. How'd you end up here in the first place? How'd you not end up in that accident? I was a driver for the immigration minister up in Canada for a year, and there was a terrorist attack there, and the guy jumped in and put a gun to the head of one of the drivers. And it was a whole thing. He didn't actually end up shooting him. The guy got away, but I was actually parked in that driver's spot. I had just moved up 20 minutes before. Could have been me. How many could have beens are in your life? You're not sitting here by accident. You're sitting here because God has preserved you and cared for you and loves you. You're sitting here because at some point in your life, you heard the truth. And you're here. The God who got you this far will keep going with you. He's not going to abandon you. So we can pray to him. Lead us in the way everlasting. Help me, because I want wickedness to depart from me. Now, before we close, there's just a few more things I do want to cover quickly, because there's just so much we need to respond, and it gets all of us thinking about different things. And one of the first questions is always like, how do I talk to my kids? Like, now, oh my gosh, like, this is what's going on. How do I talk to my kids? First of all, this is going to sound trite, you got to talk to them. We're afraid. It's scary to talk about these things. We got to talk to them. And people say to me, like, well, I'm scared that I'm going to be the first one to bring up this topic. And I'm always like, well, first of all, if you say that to me, you probably are already too late. Secondly, so who else do you want to introduce the topic to them? Because no offense to any kids present, kids are pretty stupid. I know this because the other day, my friend, his kid was crying for cheese while holding cheese. And it's great. They grow up and they get smarter and smarter, and it's wonderful. And then it's wonderful. But, like, we're not born smart and knowing everything, right? And so, like, so do you want to talk to your kids? Do you want the other kids at school to talk to your kids? And I actually only know one guy who never saw anything, who's my age. The only reason is because every time he heard a word or a term on the playground, he ran home and he asked his dad what it meant. And his dad answered him. He didn't say, don't worry about it, tell you when you're later, it's an adult thing. Because what would you do if your parents told you that? You just go look it up. You ask your friends. Like, what kid has been like, what does this mean? You're like, don't worry about it. And they're like, okay. He would answer him, not graphically, but specifically. Another friend of mine, like, he practices this, and his kids are teenagers, and one day they're eating dinner, and his daughter is like 12, looks up and says, what is such and such? And she named a sex position. And he said, it's a sex position. And she said, gross, and kept eating dinner. What would happen if he said, it's nothing, I'll tell you later, it's an adult thing? She would either Google that word or term. What would she find? that word or term. Or she'd ask her friends at school, who might tell her even something worse than she'd find on Google, because they're trying to understand something that they're not like, and interpret it through wherever they're at in life, right? So we need to talk. If you're wondering how to talk to your kids, you can skip ahead to the one with the 3 books on there. There's 3 books that I'd recommend. 2 of them are called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. Get them on Amazon. And the one at the bottom there is the original. It's for kids about 7 to 11 or 12. And just the story of a kid talking to his parents about all these terms, about addiction, about sex, all these things. And it's completely appropriate for wherever your kid is at. People go, well, is my kid mature enough? They are. Because it works through basically whatever their understanding is now. They will not know more about sex at the end of the book than they did at the beginning of the book, but they will understand about addiction and what pornography is and how to handle it and how the brain works and the chemistry and all those things. And if you're wondering how to have conversations with anybody, I mean, reading that book helped me talk to adults a lot better. It just gives really good, clear ways of talking about it. And then the one above it, Good Pictures, Bad Pictures Junior, when I met the author of that book, she said, yeah, I'm writing a new version for ages 3 to 6. And I was like, no, you aren't. That's impossible. And then I got the book, and I was like, this is incredible. Because we all understand, like, you can talk to any kid. When she was just speaking on this, before she published these books, she talked to this mom, and then the mom wrote her a letter and said, yeah, I told her, like, kids understand about private parts. They don't really necessarily understand, but they know that when they run out of their bedroom naked, when you have guests over, you're like, hey, only mommy and daddy are supposed to see your private parts, and you're not supposed to show them that. Go back in your room. You're not talking about sex or any of this stuff. They're just like, right, private parts. Okay. And so she told her daughter, who was 5, when people show other people what only mommy and daddy were supposed to see, that's called pornography. That's pretty simple, huh? And then they're in a grocery store, and there was a Cosmo magazine on the rack there. And the girl pointed and said, Mom, oh no, pornography. Because she was like, that woman is showing people what only mommy and daddy were supposed to see. And the store was pretty embarrassed, and they removed those magazines after getting called out by a 5-year-old. But you can have, that's just an example of, like, we actually can have these conversations with anyone, with any age. And then the last one there is this book, King's Daughter. And it came out of, I was giving this almost identical talk to a youth group. And I was talking about the part where we all have value and dignity. And normally, when you say, there is nothing that you can do that will change how God sees you. Like, I don't know how you guys felt. It's a pretty uplifting part of the message. And I looked up expecting to see smiles. And I looked up and I saw one young woman drop her eyes. And I immediately knew it was not something that she did that made her think she didn't have value, but something that was done to her. And that's why ever since then I've always made sure to add, there's nothing that anyone can do that can change your value or worth. And these are very difficult things to talk about. But I've never been in any room in the world where it's not something that is a reality, that people have not taken and twisted what God has made. But it's true. There is nothing anyone can do that will change your value or worth. And so in that moment, when I saw this girl, I immediately just made up a story about a little girl walking through a kingdom with her father, the king, and how all these things happen to her. And sometimes she falls and she stumbles and she rips her dress. And then all these things, and at one point, though, she gets pushed into the mud. It's not what she does, but it's what happens to her, that someone else pushes her into the mud. And yet the people of the village still bow. And so she says to her father, why do they bow? And he says, you're my daughter. You're the king's daughter. You're a princess. And she says, but I'm all dirty. He says, you're a princess. My dress is ripped. You're a princess. There's nothing anyone can do. And so as I worked on that, I decided to try to turn it into a picture book, because I wanted to be able to read this to my daughters and to have other fathers read it to their daughters. And we just published it a few months ago. And so we actually do have some out there for sale if you want them. And you can just look at it too. It's also on Amazon if you want to. No pressure to buy it at all. But if you're looking for a way for how we need to talk to one another and how we need to talk to our kids, I'd encourage you to look at it, because we need to know how to address these things, because they're real and they happen. And like I said, there's all these lies coming at us all the time. If you go to the website of the ministry that I started, strengthified.ca, you go .ca/resources. There's a bunch of stuff on there. There's filters. There's other books. And there's also this book. It's just a downloadable free PDF. Oh, and it's gone. Sorry, I know I went out of order. So you go strengthified.ca/resources. It's like 40 pages. And when I have it printed out, people go, oh, good, it's man-sized. I could read that. And it just takes you the very first few basic steps of getting free from pornography. Useful to read again. If this is not something you're currently struggling with, but it'll give you the language and the tools to help other people, because this is impacting all of our lives in some way. And if you will just have questions for me, you can email me there, josh@strengthified.ca, and maybe I'll get, maybe we'll email out some of these links in the week for people who want access to the resources. But the main point that I want you to take away from all this is we've studied this truth. I hope that I've made a pretty strong case for this to be a rock-solid truth that you cannot change your value and your worth, and you cannot change anybody else's. And so in light of that, all I want you to do is something. Do something. Because all of us have brokenness. It might be very specific to what we've talked about. It might be kind of related. It might be something else. But there is something in our life that is broken, where we have accepted lies. And I would just like you to do something. Take that first step. Sometimes what we do is we go, all right, Lord, I'm going to try to get there, and I'm just going to pray that I get there. And God's like, also, have you tried getting there? Actually, I remember, it's a quote from Pastor Pat. It was the first time I ever was at a men's conference with him many years ago, and he probably doesn't remember saying this, but unbeknownst to him, I've quoted him all over the world. Where there's men's conference, and this guy asked a question about pornography. And they went down, and all the pastors on the panel were like, well, I think about this verse, and oh, I think about this, and oh, I think about this. And they were all giving these verses, and it got to Pat, and he said, also, don't watch pornography. And I was like, yes, thank you, right? Like, because sometimes we just get really focused on like, oh, I'm just going to, like, no, we have to do something, right? Like I said last week, if you get on a plane and you end up in the wrong destination, and you go back to that first destination and get on the same plane, you do exactly what you did before, you're going to end up in the same destination. You got to get on a different plane. You got to get where there's a new flight plan. And if you're here and you're struggling, if you have brokenness and it's not getting better, you got to try something different than what you've done before today. And so as we close, we're not gonna sing a song today. We're just gonna play some music. What I ask is that you just take some time. I think we'll have some people up front if you want to pray with somebody. We have a room full of brothers and sisters. Maybe you need to just find somebody and pray with them. Maybe you need to send somebody a text and say, we need to have coffee this week. Or maybe you just, please at least, take a minute, and as we just listen to the music, just talk to God and say, all right, what's my first step? And then please do it. He loves you. He created you on purpose for a purpose. And like I said, none of us here are perfect. Not me, not you. But every one of us was made perfectly according to plan. He's got a plan. You're part of it. You cannot mess up the way he made you. So whatever it is, to take that next step in walking that out, pray about it, and do something.